David Mansfield grew up in Sydney and joined the Campsie Ecclesia as a young person. He was baptised at the Campsie Ecclesia and remains at the Campsie Ecclesia some 60 years later. David joins Wilderness Conversations to share his story and his experiences as a father, a grandfather and a brother in Christ. David, thanks very much for joining Wilderness Conversations.
Thank you, Steve. Yep.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal story. You're part of a massive family, the Mansfields, who have in all sorts of areas of Christadelphian life in Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and the circumstances of some of your early years?
Yes, certainly. Well, the Mansfield family is a very large one, but our branch is very small. So my grandfather was the second oldest of a lot of Mansfields. One particularly that many people will know will be brother Perce Mansfield, who was his younger brother, and brother Jim Mansfield was just a little bit older than my grandfather, and my grandfather's name was Eric. And there were a number of Eric Mansfields, but my grandfather was somebody that nobody would remember particularly because he was not a prominent person. He was very much behind the scenes person. And my father was the only child of Eric and his wife Clarice, who was Clarice Hocking originally. And my father only had three daughters and one son, which is me, and I had four daughters. So that's the end of that family branch as far as the Mansfield name goes. But my wife always used to say to my father, there's no surnames in the kingdom.
Exactly. Can I go back a second? So how many children do you know? How many siblings did Eric have? And do you know how the Mansfield family came in contact with the truth, going right back?
Look, I'm not really very clear about all of that. I believe that Brother Mansfield Sr., so the father of my grandfather, found the truth in an area south of Adelaide. There is a booklet about that, how that history of the truth came. And he was in a shop, and he was a God-fearing Bible reader, and someone gave him a challenge about finding the truth in the Bible, and he came back to it and found the truth there, and then eventually moved from there to Adelaide, and they became members of the Adelaide Ecclesia. So that was my grandfather's father. But that information is in the book, but I'm not really familiar with it all because my family grew up here. Well, I grew up here in Sydney.
Yeah, so obviously Eric moved, if he came from Adelaide, he moved then to Sydney for some reason.
Yes, he moved to Sydney, although my mother was from Adelaide and my father went over to Adelaide and they were married in Adelaide, but they moved again here. But yes, they had moved too. So my grandfather Eric and his older brother Jim, they both moved to Sydney and they were involved together both in ecclesial work and also in business initially until then they went different ways after a period of time here in Sydney.
What sort of businesses were they in?
Very much in food. There was the Captain Salmon was one of the things. They had KR Dowling Downs. There was a whole lot of things, particularly Scott's Pies. There was a whole lot of different businesses involved in different types of food. Again, I'm not overly familiar with any of that happened with my grandfather and Uncle Jim. I'm not really able to clearly explain anything that happened there. That was all way before my time. My grandfather passed away when I was in my early teens, and as a young fellow, I didn't really know much about what they did. I just know what my grandfather and my father then they bought a business in Sydney. They bought a fishing trawler business. So they had the lease on number 5 Wharf, Woolloomooloo, and it came with some very large fishing trawlers, the largest actually in Australia, One had been destroyed on rocks, and there was two others, and the wharf catered for them and had a big ice making machine and freezer works and everything for the fish when they were caught, to supply then the fish for the Sydney market. So they bought that, and but they evidently the business had gone bankrupt, and the reason was that the union wanted so much. They had about 200 employees in the union, and they made demands, and then my grandfather and father just said, we're not interested really particularly in the boats or the fishing, so we'll sell the boats, just keep the premises to buy the fish from the local fish markets and then distribute it from there. So that's what's happened. And I have a recollection, a very vague recollection of the fishing trawlers. One of them I remember we used to play on, and my sister Carolyn, my older sister, was playing on it, and one of the hatches landed on her finger and took the end of her finger off. I remember that. So she was 12 or something at the time, so I was about 7. I just remember that the finger was able to be restored, but that's the strongest memory I have of the fishing trawlers.
That was a big day. That was the end of playing on fishing trawlers for the kids.
Yes. I met a brother actually just recently who evidently was also playing with us at the same time. So.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
there you go.
About that, yeah.
So what do you remember about your grandfather and some of the principles, I guess, that then cascaded down through the family?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. My grandparents, in my head, they're like Zebedee and Salome from Bible times, in a very interesting way as well, in actual fact, because Zebedee, of course, was in fishing. Zebedee had people working for him, and Zebedee was always in the background, working hard to support the work that was going to be done by the Lord Jesus Christ. And I just see my grandfather exactly in that sort of mould. He was a very hard worker. In our family, both my father and my grandfather, laziness was not an attribute you were allowed to have. They were always diligent, working hard, very simple. My grandfather was a very simple, not a complex man, but a hard worker, always wanting to support the work that was going on behind. And my grandmother was very active in ministry, so she would go out to those in hospital, those who are unwell. She was always out and about doing things, helping others, very much like a Salome figure. And she was a very spiritual minded woman. And those two were very influential in a subliminal way, I suppose, for me, because they influenced those qualities which I saw, the being behind the scenes and just being supportive, and also the others going out and reaching out to those in need. So that was interesting. A good summary for that is, fortunately, my sisters allowed me to have my grandfather's Bible and my grandmother's Bible.
Oh, wow. I
asked them, could I? And they said, yes, that's fine. Because they mean a lot to me. My grandfather's Bible has inscribed in the front of it from 1957, and it just says, from Uncle Perce, from his younger brother, and it just says in it, to dear Eric, because of your, I think it says, constant and liberal contributions over the years, and that's from Perce. And my grandmother's Bible has in it, to dear Clarice, beloved sister in the Lord Jesus Christ, appreciating the wonderful spiritual uplifting shared together from 1962, November the 9th to November the 26th, from a sister Lily Lusinski, actually, whose daughter I just met actually last week, Sister Brigitte Jarrow, and I showed her this, and she was quite touched by that, had no idea. And Sister Lily and my grandmother obviously had got together, but my grandmother's Bible has multitudes of Bible notes and everything in it back from 1962, and still the notes that she's made are amazingly insightful they're exactly what we would say today. So she was on the ball as far as that's concerned. So they were quite an influence in that regard, but they lived very, very simply. Their house was a very simple home. It was the best house the worst house. Sorry, it was the worst house in the best street. so it was in a very good position, but it was just a simple house, no hot water, no kitchen, just a tub, a wringer washer, a very simple house, and they were content to work behind the scenes, supporting the work of the truth wherever it might be.
So a lot of the activity back in those days would have been the establishment of the Rathmines Bible School, or Bible schools in general, which of course then became Rathmines in due course. So they were behind a lot of sort of those sorts of activities that were occurring in the Brotherhood at that time.
Yes, they were. Not just that, but my grandfather obviously supported Uncle Perce and his work. I noticed going through some of his documentation, he supported many ecclesias all around Australia in various ways. And my father was very much like that too. If someone needed help, he'd always be generous and help wherever they could for the work of the truth. And interestingly, they were very much involved in the beginnings of Bible classes in Sydney. So a Wednesday night Bible class was quite a novel thing, and they were involved in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you just assume they've always been happening.
Yeah, exactly so. But yeah, that was a novel thing, and they involved in that. They were involved, I know, in the formation of the Shaftesbury Road Ecclesia when it came out of the Central Ecclesia and Regent Hall. And I can remember growing up in Shaftesbury Road Ecclesia, and that was a wonderful time. And that was purpose built, and we moved into that when I was only a young fellow, about 6 or something.
So it's the same place as where it is now?
Absolutely, yeah. That was quite an amazing thing. I look back at it when we go there, and I look back at it and think, what an amazing building, that the foresight they had to build that place. There was quite a number of people obviously involved. It definitely was not just these couple of people, but all of those people getting together to have a suburban ecclesia to spread the truth, because I think they thought, well, Central was large. I think it had about 400 members, and so it could well divide to have a suburban ecclesia. And then they built this hall, which was just like, even today, it is just brilliantly designed, stood the test of time, and it's right there in the middle and been a beacon for the truth in that area ever since. So that foresight that the group of people had at that time was quite remarkable. I just amazed at that. Yeah.
What are some of your memories as a young person in that place? What are some of the activities you got involved with and so on?
Well, I haven't got a lot of memories of Shaftesbury Road because, as I said, I was only there for a few years. We moved from Shaftesbury Road, a few of us, to the Campsie Ecclesia. At the time, the Campsie Ecclesia was an ecclesia of older members, not many of them, and they met in the Masonic Hall at Campsie. And the recorder of the Campsie Ecclesia was swept off the rocks fishing and died quite suddenly for the ecclesia, and he was the major brother in that ecclesia who did much of the work, and there weren't many people to step up.
What a tragic event!
It was, and it was quite. And they were considering closing the ecclesia down because they didn't think they could continue on, and there were a number of people in Shaftesbury Road who thought, well, Shaftesbury Road won't miss us if we go and support this ecclesia. So quite a number of people went over, supported the Campsie Ecclesia, and then continued in Masonic Hall at Campsie. I can remember those days very well. I just remember we'd come in on a Sunday morning and just have to clean up because the night before the hall was been used for there was a smell of beer and everything around. So we'd come in and clean it all up for the meeting. I just remember that. And we'd have to get there early, which was quite a bit because for us, we lived in the eastern suburbs of Sydney because of the Wharf there at Woolloomooloo, and we lived nearby. So we had to travel quite a distance to Campsie. I remember one Sunday morning counting the number of traffic lights that we went. It took us about an hour or so, and it was 125 sets of traffic lights as a young boy.
Wow.
All the way. So we had to leave early to get there. But that's what we did. And then eventually the local church down the street was being sold because the Congregational Church was going to combine with the Uniting Church, and they didn't need this extra building. So we were able to purchase that, and that's exactly where Campsie has been ever since. So we're still in the church hall at the moment.
Do you remember what year approximately that was?
I was in the mid-60s. I could look it up, but I can't remember.
Yeah, okay.
Mid-63, 64, something like that.
So we're coming on to 60 years ago.
Yes, exactly right. And we're still in the same church hall and still there. And it comes in handy being a church, it looking like a church with all the stained glass windows, because even as we speak, I just got a text from a lady who turned up to Campsie. In fact, she turned up last Sunday to Campsie saying, and texted me saying, there's nobody here. Do you start at 11 o'clock for your morning service? And we had to text back and say, yes, I'm sorry, we're not there because we're away at a Bible camp, but we'll be there next Sunday. And she turned up last Sunday. She just moved into the area. It was the closest church for her, so she wanted to come. And she joined with us, and a very lovely lady. And she's just texted me saying, can I explain to her the Trinity in the Bible, because she can't find it there. So it comes in handy to be a place where...
Well, you can tell you're still looking yourself. You haven't found it.
Exactly.
Well, you never know, do you?
No, exactly right.
Some of your memories, I suppose you had youth events and things like that back in those days?
Yes, we did. There was, as I said, we used to travel out to Campsie, but there was a number of ecclesias nearby, of course. And the Riverwood Ecclesia had a strong youth group at the time. I was a bit involved with that. Brother Kevin Dennis used to organise things for the young boys as well, and I was always included in that. They invited me, but because I'd coming from a long way, I sort of didn't have a lot of. I wasn't a local to have a lot of interaction with the others, and I was out on my own there in the eastern suburbs. There weren't many other young people. There wasn't any other young people other than my sisters and myself. And my best friend, Robert Hodgkinson, he was at St. Susie, so he was away as well. So the two of us were sort of about on the outer in a way, because we were sort of distant from the group, but they always included us and tried to reach out to us, which was very nice. And at Campsie, of course, we were very small. I was always the only person in my Sunday school class most of my life. But that was fine. I was used to being on my own. I had three sisters, and I was happy in my own company, so it didn't particularly worry me. But looking back, I probably should have involved myself a bit more in things. I was quite happy in my own company, and Rob and I used to be on the phone a fair bit, and I'd often go to his place and stay over. But that was my memory. But always, and anything we need to go to, my dad was always very keen to be involved in anything that was work of the truth was involved.
Mm. Do you remember some of the influences that led to your baptism? Do you remember being baptised, and was there any sort of event or reason or way of thinking that inspired you at that time?
Yeah, I was very enamoured by a number of different people. Uncle Perce, of course, because we were involved in the Bible school from its very start, and I went to every Bible school, so 3 times a year from when I was about, I suppose, about 9 or 10 till I was about 17. And of course, that's a lot of Bible marking from Uncle Perce. And I had a Bible that was absolutely full of the Bible marking. We did the whole of the book of Esther, one Bible school, the whole lot, every bit marked. And then we did the tabernacle, and I loved the drawing of had all the various articles of the tabernacle drawn in beautiful drawing. I thought I'd get a prize, but I didn't because there were some others who could draw a lot better than I could. But that Bible, which had all my Bible marking in it, from Uncle Perce was inspirational. I loved to do it, but I lost it. I lost that Bible. Even though I had a reward and everything in it, I lost it. And what I realised was that all of those marking that I had in the Bible, they weren't in my head; they were in my Bible. So I thought, no, I've got to, whatever I put in my Bible, it's got to go through my head. So the other influential person in my life as a young person was Uncle John Martin, coming over to Bible schools, and then I went over to end of year studies in Adelaide, and he was just inspirational in showing the excitement and the passion of the Bible, and that just I was just absolutely overwhelmed by that. So I loved that, and I couldn't get enough of that. And then Brother David Evans, he once at end of year study said that what we should do is have a pattern of Bible marking for 5 minutes every day of our lives as a process of being disciplined in your own life to actually do something in a disciplined manner. And I saw the value of that, and I actually did that for many, and still really do for many years. I would listen to the exhortation and the lectures, and I would take notes, and then I would mark that into my Bible. I would take notes and not put it directly into the margin, and that was again an influence by Auntie Pam Mansfield. And Auntie Pam Mansfield had this principle. She called it the Ezra principle, from Ezra in the Bible, where they not just explained the Bible, not just read the Bible, but explained its meaning. So she said you should never write directly in the Bible. You should write in a notepad and then transfer it later. So that was the pattern I did, and I found that remarkable. Unfortunately, I haven't lost that Bible. It's still with me today. And
a well-used Bible.
Very well-used Bible. But what it is the notes that I have in my Bible are succinct, because what I've got is an exhortation I might listen to. And I took notes, and I still do take notes in everything that I listen to, because of the principle that here's an opportunity. John Martin said once, he said, it doesn't matter who's saying what from the platform. If it's from the Bible, it's got value and power, and you will get something out of it. If you don't get anything out of it, it's your fault. It's not the Word of God's fault, or the speaker's fault. So I would take the notes, I would write them down, and then the exhortation I would look at on the Monday and the Tuesday in my 5 minutes of Bible marking each day, and I would note that down, and I would put it in a way that I understood. So my own little way, I would, not the way the person said it, but the way I understood it, and the cross references, and I knew what I meant by what I put in my Bible. So now when I look at it, I know what I mean. It's not someone else telling me their words. And that also, the other thing about that is when you do 5 minutes of Bible marking, the Bible gets you in, and you won't stop at 5 minutes.
It's never 5 minutes.
Never 5 minutes. And I said to David later, Brother David Evans, I said to him later, a few years ago, I said, I did that. He said, I didn't know if anyone actually did that. I said, no, I did do that, and I still do it. And I said, and it gets you in, doesn't it? You can't be 5 minutes. He said, no, exactly right. He knew that. So that's what I did. And they were the influences that were particularly in my life, the thing, and the passion that the brethren had for the word of truth. And the Bible then spoke for itself as far as I was concerned.
Does that mean you were baptised when you were at the Campsie Ecclesia?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was baptised.
So does that mean you've been there the whole time at Campsie since your baptism?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I was baptised April the 1st, so I wasn't worrying me about that it was April the 1st. I was actually baptised in Riverwood's bath, because we didn't have a bath at that time. The church didn't have a baptismal bath, obviously. We've put that in. So I was baptised at Riverwood. I got baptised before, in actual fact, I was going to take a year off from my studies. So after my HSC, we went over to end of year studies in Adelaide, then came back I was baptised, and then the next year we were overseas for a year. So that was another reason why I thought, no, I need to do something about it while I'm still in Australia.
What year was that?
That was 1973. Yeah.
Right. And year overseas sounds interesting. Was that with the family?
Yes. So my father, my grandfather had passed away at that point of time. My grandmother, as I said, she was very, very active and very influential in my life spiritually, always getting into my head with spiritual ideas. But she was stricken with osteoarthritis at a fairly young age that progressively disabled her till, in fact, she then had to live with us. My grandfather had passed away. She lived with us, and I became her carer, particularly because Dad was at work. I was the only male, so I was able to lift her out of bed, put her into the wheelchair, and then when I got my license, take her out of the wheelchair, get her into the car, drive her to places.
So you did all this sort of around your schooling. So yes. you'd look after her before school and then come home and look after her as well.
Yeah, just to be on hand. Mum was looking after her, obviously.
Okay.
But I was just on hand to do any lifting sort of work, and then taking her in and out of the car, that sort of thing. But she would always her sense of getting into my head. Spiritual things was very important to her. When I was a young teenager, they lived only up the road from us in this very old house, and she used to give me 20 cents for polishing the kitchen floor, and so I was very happy to do that, actually, because not for the 20 cents, but after we put the wax in the floor, I got to use this polishing machine, electric polishing machine, which I thought was fantastic. Anyway, I used to polish the floor, but I could never get the black part of the lino as glossy as the rest of the pattern. And while I was doing this, and I'd be on my hands and knees with the wax, and she'd be sitting there, and she was in pain from her arthritis, of course. This is early days, though. But she'd, and this is why I had to do it, because she couldn't do it. And she'd point out where I missed a spot, and she was quite Victorian about doing things. But all the time, when I look back, I see what she's doing. It wasn't about the polishing. It was about her having time with me to get into me spiritual things. And she'd just be talking the whole time about principles, things worth doing, it's worth doing well, and that sort of thing. But later on, when I went back to the house before the house was sold, I looked at that lino and I found out why I couldn't get the black part, because that was the backing of the lino. The lino.
Oh, you'd worn through.
No, I hadn't worn it. It was worn through. The lino was. The house was so. The lino was worn through, and it was the backing. But it
had lost the surface.
Yeah, I had no idea about that. And I looked back and I thought, "Oh, you cheeky thing!" He said what she was doing was the principles of work ethic, doing a good job, doing what she asked, but also listening to her speak to me. And the same when I came home later, when she lived with us, and I'd come home from high school and come in and do whatever she wanted to do. I'd have to make her a cup of tea exactly the way she made it. I liked it. And then she played Chinese checkers with me. And it wasn't about the Chinese checkers. I had to go up and do some study, but no, she wanted to get there. She just wanted to talk with me. And I look back at that and reflect on that with such love for her and what she did for me, that she, without realizing it, her influence and the influence of both my grandparents was very, very strong. And my mum and dad, my mum was a very gentle woman, and my dad was a little energizer bunny, just all over the place doing lots of stuff for everybody else as well as himself. And that was so influential for me in so many different ways.
Amazing, all the different personalities, and what a privilege it is to have so many people influencing you like that in different ways.
Yes, absolutely. I look back at all those influences and see how much of that was for good, and you can see the power of the word through people to other people.
you obviously then went on to live a life in Campsie. What are some of the things you remember from bringing up? You had 4 daughters, so you brought them up, and obviously your life was centred around the Ecclesia there. What are some of your memories and thoughts about that?
Yeah, the Ecclesia was always small. We had probably maximum of 40 members at any point of time. At one stage, we had 25 in the Sunday school, so it was quite large families. Many of the families, like John and Pam's family, used to travel 2 hours down to get there. So the dedication of all the people everyone that was there wanted to be there together, and they worked together well. And being small, you always had a job. There's never, and never has been all my life, there's never been where I haven't had something to do, responsibility. And if anyone was missing there, you knew it, and that's the advantage of a small ecclesia. So we were very, very busy, but also very sensitive to the fact that there were other ecclesias around, and trying to reach out. We used to have special efforts like everyone else did, and everyone contributed, very, very well, but small but active, I suppose, is what you'd say, and it was constant all the time. Yeah.
Times moved on. Your family's moved on. They have families of their own now. How do you keep yourself busy these days?
Yeah, well, I'm retired now. I have been retired for 7 years.
We didn't actually talk about that. We didn't talk about you didn't become Mr. Captain Salmon Mark II, did you?
No, I didn't actually. And I look back on that, and I think it must have been to my father's. He never said anything about that. And I obviously the business was there to move into if needed, but it was never, in my mind, I was never going to do it because I liked to study. I liked biology. I wanted to do something in the healing arts. So I went to university, but I used to study there. My grandfather would come up and be quite annoyed that I was up in my study on a Saturday studying instead of getting out and trying to sell something. That's what he that you should be doing, and thought I was wasting my time up there. But I was never told. I just had to help. Like whenever I had free time or holidays or anything, I was always expected and happy to do it. Help out delivering things for Dad in his business. I used to go in there as soon as I could get my license. In fact, as soon as I had my motorbike license, I was up in the city with my little motorbike with things on the back, delivering it to various.
So you're an Uber driver before, way before Uber was even invented.
Way before. I was Ubering down. I remember a couple of times when I had my motorbike, and I used to deliver to restaurants, particularly Chinese restaurants, and they wanted all sorts of exotic things. And one time I had a box of live crabs on the back of my motorbike, and the octopus strap,
as you do.
Yeah, and the octopus strap broke on it, and that split, and the crabs just went everywhere across George Street, and hilarious. They just ran for the gutters. They could smell the water, and they were gone. I just had to go back and get another box. And another time I was there, and I had a cardboard box of frozen turkeys in the box, and it broke as well. And these turkeys, when they hit the ground, they just went like bowling balls. And people were jumping out of the way in the middle of the city as these turkeys went off from this motorbike. I just kept on driving. I didn't look back.
Well, at least it's one way of not getting too many jobs from your dad when that's the sort of level of delivery performance you were delivering.
No, he never berated me for anything like that. He just, well, get another box, off you go, and I have to do it again. So it was never that, and there was never any pressure to do anything. But I look back on that, and maybe he expected me to join him in the business, but I didn't. But I used to be happy to go down there, and this work ethic that was established. I just used to take sides of lamb and bags of salt and rice and everything up and down gangplanks into ships and all sorts of things. Of course, we provided food for cargo ships as well, so into there. So that was what some of the things I did. So that was just the way it happened.
So going to university back here, we're talking about 70s, would have been rarer than it is today. I think today's pretty common.
Yes.
But it would have been a little more rare then. Was there any pushback from grandparents, parents about that choice to go and do university studies?
No, my family never influenced me one way or the other about that. They just let me find my way. I look back on that and I think that was quite wonderful. There was no influence. Just the only influence was that whatever I did, I had to do it to 100%, which is, right. and that I look back and that obviously did influence me. The things that my grandfather and grandmother taught me, that because when I decided what I was going to do at university, because I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to do whatever I wanted to do at Sydney University. The obvious, because I liked biology, the obvious thing was to do medicine, which was normally the hardest to get into. But I chose not to do medicine for the very fact that I thought I had my grandmother's words in my head that whatever you do, you need to do it to 100%. And I thought, I can't do the truth and medicine 100% at the time. At the time, those that were coming out of medicine were having to get just the late night jobs. There was a glut of doctors.
Right.
And at the time, it was, you got the dog's body jobs basically when you graduated. And also I thought I need an occupation where I can set the times a bit more that will coincide with my work in the truth and my involvement in the work of the truth. And so that's why that was the simple reason why I chose dentistry. It just happened to be the next one down on the list and something I could establish, a thing. And then I found out that the very hands-on, practical things of dentistry, I loved the artwork, that sort of thing was I loved as well. So it just suited me well. But that was the simple reasoning. I came back. I was going to do something in the health industry. I was going to do it at university. Had to fit in with the truth, and that was it. And no one said anything one way or the other, except that my father said to me, David, whatever you're doing, it cannot interfere with us going on Wednesday night Bible classes, Sunday mornings and Sunday night lectures. You are going to be there the whole time. And he'd say, I don't care if you've got a major exam the next morning on a Thursday morning, you are Bible class and on the Wednesday night. And I accepted that. I said, yep, that's fine. I'll just rearrange my life and structure it in a way. And that was the David Evans discipline principle, I suppose. Like if you discipline yourself and you structure things, you can get things done. And that's just what I did. But it just happened. It wasn't sort of a burning goal or anything I had. It would just happened.
You make it sound so simple. I mean, people wrestle with decisions, but you make it sound simple if you get your principles sort of lined up, understand what are some of the governing factors. Perhaps decisions are simpler if that's our approach, as opposed to an alternative way of decision making.
I suppose in retrospect that is true, but it wasn't what I was thinking. That's just what I did, and as I said, I think it was the influence of my grandparents and my parents very much in allowing me to make decisions, but they just put, again, as you said, they put the principles into my head, and I was actually just acting on them without realising it. I had no idea. I look back and I think, I just went along with and followed a pattern and a plan that really I didn't have, clearly in my mind, in actual fact.
Well, after a lifetime of dentistry, you've retired.
Yes.
That would have been quite difficult to give that up, I imagine, after doing it for so long.
Well, it would have been. My wife always used to say, when I enjoyed it, I still was enjoying it, and still thought I was capable of doing the best job possible. I thought whenever I thought my eyesight was going to be bad or I wasn't giving 100%, then I would give up. But my wife would say to me, what's going to take? What's it going to take for you to when you're going to retire? She was working for me a couple of days a week as well, and I was cutting down my hours, but still enjoying it. And then, unfortunately, she developed cancer, and as a result of that, I decided that I would sell the practice and be with her on that journey of her treatment, which was over 12 months and quite severe. So that was the reasoning behind. Again, I sold the practice based upon not a plan, but circumstances happened, and I wanted to be with her because she was the most important thing at the time. And so I just stopped, sold the practice, stopped working, and haven't worked any ever since. I relinquished my credentials, and quite happy now to have done that. I don't need to do anything more like that.
And Julie's treatment was successful, which is thanks to God.
It has been so far. She's now passed. It's been 7 years now. The first 2 years for her particular condition was the most critical, and then 5 years it's still a question mark. 7 years means the percentage of recurrence is lower, but it's never zero, and we always are thankful for every day that we have.
Yeah, that's a great principle as well. You still keep yourself busy, though, I'm sure. What sort of things are you doing these days?
Yeah, very busy at the moment. Retirement, I don't know how everyone says it, how you had time for working, but yeah. So at Campsie, we were doing seminars every Sunday, or during the week as well, but every week for 25, 30 years, and we always had someone there. We always had seminar attendees. We started off with 50 when we started off the Learn to Read the Bible Effectively seminars, and we set up the back hall as a seminar centre. So we started off with 50, where we started off in actual fact, in one of the very first Learn to Read the Bible Effectively seminars set up at the Hilton Hotel in near the airport. And we started there, and that was costing us a fortune to rent that place. And then we told the people there, well, look, we've got a seminar, set a seminar centre up at Campsie. Were you happy? And they all said, yes. Why are we coming here? So they came to the back hall there, and they were going. We had people there for years and years and years. And then when COVID hit, seminars were no longer an option there. And then Brother Colin Jamison from our Ecclesia was being involved in doing Bible talks and preaching online to Pakistan at the time, and he was therefore not able to support the seminars like he had before. So he said, well, now we're not doing it. Do you want to come on board with that? So that's what I've been doing ever since then, from 2019 onwards. I've been also helping out preaching in Pakistan, and now I do two a week. Colin was doing 5 a week, doing 2 a week there, and I have been over to Pakistan last July to do some Bible camps for them. I did some online Bible camps for them on Zoom, and God willing, hoping again to go over with Brother Matthew Jamison to Pakistan this July as well, to do some more Bible camps there. And the truth in Pakistan has grown exponentially, and we have 1,700 brothers and sisters. This is just in the Punjab region. This is the northern area of Pakistan, and from 2004, when there were only 2 brothers and sisters there, there are now 1,700 brothers and sisters, about 2,000 contacts, and about 2,500 Sunday school scholars, and we have nearly 80 ecclesias just in that area. So just quite a number of brethren are supporting that work, and that's ongoing, and it is just, they are just the most beautiful people, and the effect is fantastic. In actual fact, last week we were up at Seniors Bible Week at Rathmines, and on the way as we were driving up, I got a text from Pakistan saying that they were they just completed a new hall, and they were doing an opening ceremony on the Tuesday, which is our time, 9:30 p.m. our time, and could I and Colin do talks for their opening ceremony, which we did while we're up there. So it works very well just by using a phone or using Zoom, but using a phone. And they had 200 people that neighbours lived nearby, Christians came to the opening ceremony for the things as we preach the gospel as well. 200 people just in prayer.
Wow.
So the Ecclesia of 56, but growing. And this is an Ecclesia I do a Bible talk with them. In fact, I did one last night for them every week. It's just they're very diligent, very dedicated brothers and sisters. The brethren over there are very active in everything they do, and very organised and very innovative in the way that they would find methods to preach the gospel.
So it's a Muslim country. Are they able to preach? What are the laws associated with that?
Yes, it is the 98% Muslim, 241 million people in Pakistan, and only 2% are Christian. But the Christian minority are protected by the government in Pakistan, and we are allowed. Christians are allowed to preach to Christians. We will not ever try to preach to Muslims. That would be both dangerous for us to do and dangerous for them to be converted. But their own families would wreak vengeance on them. But Christians are allowed to preach to Christians, and the Christians over there, what's beautiful about preaching in Pakistan is that all the Christians are strongly Christian, because in Pakistan you're either Muslim or Christian. So if you're Christian, you believe in the Bible, you love God, you love Jesus. All they don't know is what the Bible teaches. Their churches over there don't really teach them anything.
Yeah. So what's the attraction? Is it finding out the truth, getting that level of knowledge that's attracting them, that we're able to provide for them?
What we're able to provide is the promise, the hope of the resurrection, and the kingdom of God, and baptism for salvation. Those three things. And if we can show them, and we can, in the Bible, what the Bible teaches about all the other doctrines, because they believe the Bible, they accept it. And the other beauty of Pakistan is that every person in Pakistan speaks the same language. So Urdu is, there's no dialects, there's no nothing. So when our brethren over there translate what we say into the language, the local people can understand it. There's no dialect problems. So many of them, of course, are not literate. Many of them, they are all very poor people. But in their Bibles, they can see that it is from their Bible, it's from the Christian Bible, it's the Word of God, and they just accept it because of that factor. And so that makes preaching very powerful and very simple. And because they don't know a lot, because their churches only teach them Bible stories and that's about it, because they go to church because they're Christian, but now we're telling them, no, if you're Christian, this is what Christ taught. Very different, right. and it's just, and they just come and they love it, and they tell their friends, and then there's the ACBM supports in giving food supplies and things like that when they're very poor, when they haven't got any food, their day-to-day existence living, and so that shows that, you know, when they see a group of people that care as well, then they're very interested in seeing, okay, what have we got to say?
And you said you visited. I didn't realise you'd been there. What's going to Pakistan like?
Yeah, I was unsure about it, but it was the most wonderful experience I've ever had. I'm very keen to go back again. I found myself I felt quite safe. The brothers and sisters are very enthusiastic, very warm, very vibrant in their expressions of worship. Their music is amazing, and very full on. They you know, when they're playing on the little tablas, the little drums, they're sweating, you know, with the enthusiasm of what's going on, and it's very loud, but it's very, very lovely. But I was blown away by their Bible knowledge. Unbelievable. They are right. They're very diligent. They take notes. Those that can write or take notes, and when after the talks they have discussion groups, and when they go into their discussion groups, they all contribute to what they want to, and they put it on a big poster. So they have a big bit of cardboard and they write down the major points they think. They take about an hour for the discussion groups, and then they come and present that to the whole group. So there's the Bible camps, there was 300 at each of the camps, and they presented. And normally the presenters that will speak and say what the group says are normally the sisters, because the sisters are very articulate, and they are very spiritually minded and very keen, and they're just on the edge of their seats with our talks. And our talks are just translated into Urdu, but we have graphics on the screen to explain what we're talking about. And some of the sisters were so enthusiastic they had to be shut down because they wanted to keep on talking longer and longer and longer. So yeah, very enthusiastic, and a little bit of the English I could read on their notes that they had. One of the things was Brother Matthew was there, and he did I think on Joseph, and they had Joseph was having to deal with a dysfunctional family, but maintained his integrity and his belief in the promises by his grandfather Abraham. Like, that was written there for me, and I think, my goodness,
Great summary.
these people have got the point. Yeah.
That sounds really exciting. I'm glad you're involved in that. Sounds fascinating. And we often wonder and talk about the fact that Christ hasn't returned, and you hear stories like that and you think maybe that's why Christ hasn't returned yet. There's still work to be done.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing your story, David. You're a grandfather now. We spoke earlier on about your grandfather and the impact that both your parents and your grandparents and others had on you. As we close out this conversation, what's a thought that you could leave with us as we leave?
Yeah, I just try to be what my grandfather and my father was to me, and that is just an example of stability more than anything else, of seeing the priority of life is the Word of God, the truth, being involved, supporting that, no matter what, not saying anything negative about other things, not having a combative attitude, but just being behind, just supporting, and being always there and always involved and active in any way. That's, to me, I just think that's what I was taught. That's what I try to do. And any opportunities I get to say spiritual things to my grandchildren, I try to do, just like my grandmother did, particularly on a one-on-one basis, which is really quite special if you can get that and get the grandchildren on their own and just chat away with them, because that's what my grandmother did. And I know I really respect what she did, and very, very grateful for what they did for me.
David, thanks very much for joining Wilderness Conversations.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks very much.